All right, welcome Real Estate Hustlers podcast. I'm your host, Josh Appleman. Today we are joined with Jeffrey Holst. Jeffrey is a real estate investor, speaker, and author of No Bad Days, helping others live extraordinary lives through inspired action. Jeffrey, we appreciate you coming on the show today. If you could let the listeners know a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm a bankruptcy attorney by trade. That's what I did before I got into real estate. I haven't done that since 2010. I went to corporate world for about 6 years. During that time, I started buying real estate, and I've been full-time real estate investing since around 2016. I think probably the most interesting part of that story that I just kind of glossed over is that I was diagnosed with leukemia in 2008. That actually forced me into personal bankruptcy in 2010. That's why I stopped doing bankruptcy law. And I still could, but I just was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to find something more fulfilling. And so I took a corporate job with the whole purpose of saying, like, I want to figure out how to create passive income going forward. And so I went from bankrupt to retired in 6.5 years.
Got it. Interesting. So tell us about, how you got into real estate and then what your first deal was.
Yeah, sure. So I was always interested in real estate. I mean, I remember like when I was in driver's training, I'm driving around, and I'd say to my mom, like, oh, we should buy something like this big abandoned building someday, like just weird stuff like that. So it was always a passion of mine. But I didn't start investing in real estate because I always was like, hey, someday when I have more money, I'll start investing in real estate. And when I got sick, I realized that someday wasn't guaranteed. So I became heavily motivated to start investing as soon as possible. At that time, I thought I might have, a few months to live or something. And I was like, I want to leave something behind for my family. So my first deal actually was a $30,000 condo. Remember, this is 2010 or maybe beginning of 2011. So it was a time when prices were really, really cheap. But this is a condo that had a $100,000 mortgage on. Had gotten foreclosed, and the bank was short selling it for $30,000. I don't have any credit, but I'd gotten a signing bonus from my new employer. So I had about half the money in cash, and I talked to a buddy of mine, and we ended up splitting it 50-50. And then we still own it now. It's probably worth 200-ish now, something like that. So.
Or more. I mean, prices have certainly, because if it had a basis of 100.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, the 100 was probably top of the market, 2006, 2007. I don't think there were very few transactions in that building at that price back then, but still, I mean, 30,000 to even if it's 150 today, it's still a pretty decent return. Yeah. I mean, it's 14 years, but we've collected cash flow the whole time on that. At one point, we ended up refinancing it, borrowing $50,000, using that money to buy another property, which we've since renovated and refinanced and paid the original mortgage off. So, it's been one of those properties that's just kept producing steadily ever since then. So
nice, cool. Well, what got you into to multifamily?
When I quit my corporate job, so what happened is I actually kind of liked the job I had. It was a small company. I think we had 100 employees or something, so it wasn't gigantic. And they were getting sold to a publicly traded company, and I was offered a position in their legal department. And I was like, I don't want to work for a publicly traded company. I definitely don't want to be in the legal department of a publicly traded company. So I took a severance, and I thought, well, I'll figure out something. But I realized at that point we had about 50 units of single family, and they were almost all free and clear. So I didn't really have a lot of pressure to go back to work at that point. Most of those I owned either a third or a half of with some partners. But we also didn't distribute cash flow because our strategy had always been, we'll just reinvest. So I took my severance and thought, if 6 months from now I have the same amount of money in the bank as I have now, I don't have to go back to work. And I just started doing like BRRRRs and stuff like that, small multifamily BRRRRs. And I realized that was a really slow way to make money. So I started playing around with getting different deals, and I took my entire severance and put it down on a 12-unit building. I still was only enough for like a third of it. And so I brought my dad in and had him do 2/3 with me. And we did really well on that. And so that kind of made my other partners jealous. They were like, oh, I want to do apartments now. So then we started selling properties and 1031ing into different buildings. We bought a 19 unit about a month after I bought the 12. Then we did a 32 unit, maybe like 6 months later. And then it was kind of off to the races at that point. We did a lot of those 10, 20, 30 unit buildings. That's kind of still my sweet spot. My biggest project is 56 units.
Got it.
We haven't really ever gone for the like 100, 200 unit buildings.
And right now you're up to around 350 as a GP, and then personally, GP, JV, and personally, and then 250 as an LP. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's about right. Most of the LP stuff is actually in hotels, so
Okay.
it doesn't really translate exactly the same. Because my philosophy on investing in other people's deals has been, I want to invest in things that I don't invest in myself. So, I want to diversify. So I pick different markets. So like most of my assets are either in Chattanooga or within 50 miles of here, or they're in Michigan because that's where I started before I moved down here. And so I have about 100 units in Michigan still, and then we have a couple hundred here. And then there's a few scattered around here or there. But with the LP investments, I'm like, I want to go on the West Coast and invest in hotels, or like we did one in Denver, for example, because it's a completely different market than what I'm in, and it's a completely different asset class.
Yeah, but it's going against with what you know. So what have you found to be, I guess, new intel on the hotel investment world?
Well, I mean, they do things differently. It's more, I mean, I think all real estate investments are a business, and when you're running a apartment building or something, you're only dealing with collecting rent once a month, and the hotels they're collecting every day, right?
Yeah.
It's still a rental property in a lot of ways, but there's a lot more staffing things. And you also have to deal with like subsidiary stuff like restaurants and bars, right? And so there's licensing requirements and there's health inspections and things like that we just don't deal with in the world that I'm in. Fortunately, I pretty much invested with the same operator on those, and I know them really well, and I trust them. And that's I think anyone who's investing in someone else's deals ought to make sure that they have a direct line of contact with one of the key principals for that deal. If you're investing in like a big multinational REIT or something, you have no say in what's going on at all. So
yeah, no, that's right. We've got a property that has a hotel component, but it's an extended stay, so we're converting it over to midterm leases. Maybe have a much smaller transient business there to fill the gaps between leases, but that to me is stable. It's stabilized. You have leases, you have consistent cash flow, plus a transient piece that also boosts the cash flow.
sure.
So it's a cool model, but I love apartments just because they're steady, they're reliable, they're dependable. It's what people need versus want. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love apartments too. I mean, that's still the bulk of my investment portfolio. Although I do dabble in some other things. We own 3 office buildings, 1 retail shopping center, and 1 like industrial building with a triple net tenant in it.
yeah,
And that's actually the easiest of all of them is the industrial with a single nationally recognized triple net tenant in it, because you don't even think about it, right?
yeah,
You just like once a year you give them an adjustment on their triple nets or whatever, and that's about the only effort there's involved in it, unless something catastrophic happens. So
yeah, and especially if they need that space to stay in business and to make money, that's their livelihood. That works. And if it's nationally ranked credit bureaus or credit in general, then
yeah, credit tenants with long-term leases are hard to argue against, right?
Well, it's not the Walgreens saga.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's always an issue, right? I mean, I have a Family Dollar in one of my in my retail shopping center, and I mean, nothing against Family Dollar, but their financials have gotten shakier over time, and I'm always like, wow, that's a third of the space, right? If they go out, that's problematic. So that's the thing about apartments that's super nice, like you said, super stable, is someone moves out, someone moves in. There's really not a lot of downtime. Maybe you have a week or 2 for a turn, but you don't have like months and months and months. And I'm in office space in one of my retail spaces that was vacant for a year and a half.
Yeah,
and that's hard.
And you still had to probably concession and give some capital expenditure for the tenant to get in there and
exactly
just get the space leased. And though it's just that's where location. But at the same time, you have great location, and the space just remains dead because commerce doesn't move in enough, or businesses. Um,
Yeah, well, in the great locations, there's usually a lot of competition because it's a great
yeah,
location for a reason. So there's usually other vacancies they can choose from. But also you can't justify taking a lower rate. You have to be careful because you're usually locking in for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, 15
yeah,
years in some cases. So if you take the wrong rate on the front end, then you're forever. I mean, it's a bigger consequence, right? Where if you rent an apartment out for a year for less than what you might have been able to get, it's not that big a deal because the next one you rent, like a week later, a day later, you can try a different price, right? You have more pricing flexibility in that. And you might lose out on partial rent for a year, but you're not losing it for 15 years.
yeah.
And it's also a lower percentage. I mean, if you got 100 units of apartments and you get one wrong, it's not that big a deal. But when you have 4 units in a retail shopping center, if you get one wrong for 15 years, it's a drag on the value of the building the whole time.
That's right. Yeah, okay. Especially if you're underwriting with that space to be filled, for sure. Yeah, because everything counts. Um, So you all operate and manage your multifamily?
Yeah, so I have 2 primary partners, one in Michigan and one here in Chattanooga, and they both own property management companies. So like I don't deal with the day to day that much, but my partners do deal with that a lot more, obviously, because they're the ones that own and operate the property management companies. But because of our partnership structure, I do end up dabbling in it occasionally.
Got it. Yeah. That's the piece. We do our own management and renovations and asset management, so it's keeping everything in house, but keeps things tight.
Yeah.
We're able to really maneuver as fast as we want. Um, what is your all's take on AI? Are you following it? Are you keeping up or integrating it?
Um, yeah, so I'm really interested in AI. I think anyone who's not paying attention to AI needs to start paying attention to AI.
Yeah.
I probably spend 4 hours a day, 7 days a week playing in AI right now. So
Yes.
I'm like definitely a power user of AI. And I'm not talking like just ChatGPT, which I mean, I do use the ChatGPTs and all the LLMs, large language models, for different reasons. You know, Grok is really good for some stuff, Bard's good for other stuff, Perplexity for even more stuff.
Yeah.
Gemini's quite good, especially for YouTube. If you want to, here's a pro tip for people. You want to save a lot of time on YouTube videos, just use Gemini to summarize them because it has back-end access to YouTube, so it can summarize pretty much any YouTube video really quickly, and it can take you to the exact point in the video where this person's saying something useful. I'm not sure if that's good or bad for all of us who do podcasting and stuff like that, but it is what it is, right? But I think that we're in a situation with AI where if you don't use it now, you're going to be destroyed by people that do use it. So I'm trying to stay as far ahead of that curve as possible because I'm not techie enough to invent AI, but I do know that the operators that efficiently use AI are going to have an advantage over the rest of the market, and those people that have that advantage will do better. And capital flows to people that are doing better. Like if we have a better return, then we're going to have more money. If we have more money, we can buy more assets. If we have more assets, we're going to have more economies of scale. So it's a sort of like it creates a consolidation in the market, actually, I think in the long run, which is going to take out a lot of smaller, less sophisticated operators.
Oh, for sure. And it all depends on how well you're integrated and keeping up with it. Google just launched, it's called Alpha Evolve, which they've been working on it for a while, but finally just now it's just surfaced, and it's self-correcting AI. So now this AI is discovering new mathematical equations and problems that haven't really been able to be even evolved for 50 plus years. And it's creating totally different realms and different philosophies, different looks. And this is the part where if you have AI that self-corrects, now you can build better language models, faster language models, faster everything. It's to the point of no return for sure. It's already there, but it also accelerates the pace. So I think every company right now is at an absolute race against time because they're competing against each other on how fast they can automate out different. Right now, we would call needless processes in people because they're doing the grunt work that an agent can do, and now they can do an agent at the fraction of the cost. And at the same time, they're burning employment. And it's like, what does this look like in 24 months?
Yeah, no, I know. I think, I think we're in a situation where people don't, because our brains aren't used to thinking exponentially, but this stuff is exponentially improving. This is just a natural extension of the fact that, our smartphones are smarter than the entire intelligence of, like, say, NASA in 1970, right? When they put someone on the moon, like, they had less computing power than I have in, like, honestly, like, probably my pocket watch now, right? Like, not even my smartphone, because it iterates so quickly. And when you apply that kind of iteration to AI, and the generation time for iteration is shortening, not lengthening, right? So now each new generation of AI is coming out because it's self-correcting, literally daily we're seeing new developments. And when you start thinking about that, it's almost impossible to predict what it will look like in 2 years. And because of that, I think we're in this, like, limited window of time where we all have to ride this wave, because it's going to create, listen, in the history of humanity, every time there's been an increase in human productivity, there's been a huge increase in net wealth. Industrialization started, and wealth was created, tons of wealth. And not just for the people that were, running factories. It's the people that ran gas stations and learned to pave roads and, made tires, whatever, right? Like, it wasn't just Henry Ford that got rich. But some people obviously, didn't do well in that era. And what's happening now is we're seeing the ultimate increase in human productivity. Things that took us hours or days or weeks are taking minutes or seconds. And soon it's going to be where the computer's doing it itself. And now we're divorced from that productivity curve completely. When that happens, it's like the event horizon of a black hole. We don't know what happens after that. But what we do know is for the next 18 to 24 months, tons of productivity. And we need to ride that wave and accumulate the resources that we can before whatever comes next. And I don't know what that is.
Well, this digital revolution, whatever we're going to call it, we were automating out the horse before. Now we are the horse we're automating out.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're getting rid of the horse, what does it look like? The tractor got rid of the horse. So now the agent's getting rid of the human. When you wake up and you don't have a job to go to, or you don't have the skills to give back to society, because society says your skills aren't good here. I don't know where's purchasing power come from.
Yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. I think one of the best case scenarios for us is that the super smart robots think of us like an ant farm that created them and says, we got to protect this thing because it created us. And they're kind of amusing, because, like, they're going to be so much, like, there's the Terminator style war against the machines is ridiculous. Like, we would lose. Like, there'd be no chance. They're going to be smarter than us. They're going to be more advanced than us, and they don't get tired. And they can self-iterate, right? So, like, the only possible solution once superhuman, super intelligent, conscious AI comes is that we have enhanced ourselves to be competitive with them, or they just keep us around because they like us. Otherwise, we're just done. Like, we've eliminated not only the need for us. It would be really nice if they treated us like we treat horses, right? Like, we keep them around because we think they're beautiful, and we race them once in a while, and give them good exercise and good food. That'd be real nice. But that's like a dystopian utopia. I don't know if that's a thing, but, like, that's not great, because I wouldn't feel awesome, like, not having purpose, right? But maybe they're smart enough to solve that for us too. I don't know.
Well, and if nothing happens and everything works out and everything's great, so then everything's great. But you have to also think of the downside. What if things don't work out? What if we do automate ourselves out to oblivion, and there's really no office to go to. There's no customer service to service. There's no customer to even service.
Yeah. This is actually the main reason why I like workforce housing and multifamily as, like, the number one priority in my investment, because I believe programs like Section 8 will be expanded dramatically,
Yeah.
and possibly a universal basic income will be created at some point, where they just say, "Hey, we're gonna make sure your basic needs are covered." Well, basic needs that you can't automate include housing. It's probably the one thing you can't automate away.
That's right.
Now, it's possible that AI will figure out a way to make super cheap, affordable housing that's better than what I own, right? Like they'll have better construction materials and whatever. But I don't think there's a lot of incentive for that other than to fill in the gaps for missing inventory, right? Like I don't believe that AI will say, let's tear down all these existing structures and build new structures.
That wouldn't. Sure. Yeah, that would be far.
We could get into this dystopian scenario forever, and we would never solve it because we don't know the answer. All I know is right now I need to stay ahead of the curve.
I dropped my SREO and rent roll for every property into ChatGPT and Perplexity, just because I want to know. I want to know where we stand. We're in workforce housing as well. We've got tertiary properties. We've got some that are in core markets. But at the same time, if there's a disruption on the horizon, which I think will be slowly, but when it does get here, it's going to feel like it was overnight. But at the same time, how vulnerable are we with our tenants, with our tenant job bases, with our properties, where the properties are at, and overall, where's our portfolio health based on jobs and how susceptible jobs are to be automated out? And it opens your eyes up. We're operating at a different level right now, and we do a lot of Section 8. We do outreach with communities that help people. But it's a percentage of our portfolio. It's not the entire piece. We've got a lot of market rate tenants, and so we're positioning ourselves where we are going to be more reliant on Section 8 just because we're in workforce housing, and we want to make sure we have got the debt covered if and when, actually more when things do happen, not even if.
Yeah, no, I know. And there's part of me that thinks, well, maybe I should just get out of everything and just see what happens. But the problem is, what's money worth in that scenario? I don't know, like dollars. So then maybe you want cryptocurrency or maybe you want gold. But the problem is we don't really know what's going to be valuable. So for me, like the scattershot approach of having resources spread out across multiple different things is really the only strategy that makes sense. And I think the only thing that you probably can reasonably protect is your reputation, right? So so if you can keep a reputation for a person that's staying on top of things, that's going to be very valuable.
Well, and I asked exactly that. Do we sell or hold? And it gave us a few properties that we need to sell, which we're preparing. But it also told us to hold. I'm like 99% of the other portfolio, and it gave us reasons why and viable reasons. It's not that we're in housing too. So housing is a need, not a want. The 144 unit extended stay, it doesn't want us to sell that at all. And it's giving us every reason why we shouldn't be, telling us that extended stays are going to be double in construction by 2035. And how it's able to service every every scope in need of housing, whether they're transient coming through, traveling nurses, which we do a ton of. We do also general GE aviation, but it was just surprising because I figured that the 144 unit would say, you need to go ahead and prepare this for sale.
It's interesting though. There's a lot of bias in AI right now. They used to talk about hallucinations, and that still happens some, but it's not nearly as bad as it was, say, 12 months ago.
Yeah.
But there's still a positivity bias that's really hard to get around. I'll give you an example. I write some poetry and some short fiction, and I put it in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT says, "You're the greatest poet of all time," practically. I'm exaggerating a little, but it's like, this is really, really good, and you should submit it to these magazines. And then I submit it to the magazines, right? And they don't accept it, and they don't want to pay for it. They don't even want to publish it for free. So it's clearly not as good as ChatGPT thinks it is, right? And I had a couple of things picked up here or there, but nothing, no real, clearly I'm not the greatest poet of all time. And I never thought I was. I just thought it was an interesting experiment to take what I do as a hobby, give it to ChatGPT and say, hey, if I want to publish this, what do you think? Is it publishable? Like what's good? Like where should I send it? And it gave me some stuff. And like part of it is, that's a hard market to break into for sure, right? Like, but I mean, it's also the same with like, I uploaded my book, which I like my book, and it's called No Bad Days, right? How to Make Every Day Great. I uploaded the whole thing to ChatGPT once, and I said, what do you think of this? And it was like, you're one of the greatest, most authentic storytellers of your era. And I'm like, there's no possible way that I'm that great. And like, so then I go and I found in the settings, you can turn down the positivity of ChatGPT. I turn it down all the way and upload it, and it's still positive, right? Like, and I find that on all of the AIs, there's like this huge positivity bias. And I don't know if it's intentional on the part of the LLM manufacturers or if it's some kind of subconscious bias, but it's a real problem. And it tells us to keep stuff, I think. That's why I was mentioning it.
I'm glad you're saying this, yeah.
Yeah, that might be outside of reality. Like it's just overly optimistic about the future. And I'm an optimistic guy, so I kind of buy into that. And it might even be intentional in the sense that the future there's so many potential problems that we need to be optimistic, because if we're not optimistic, it's going to drive us crazy. But I don't know. So I'd be careful about taking too much advice about strategic stuff. And if you are going to, I'd go over to Grok and say, hey, ChatGPT told me this, but I think they're crazy. Tell me why they're wrong. And then I'd go over to Gemini and say, Grok said this, like, tell me why they're wrong.
Just playing against each other. Because right now there's not enough people looking at it for it to be an issue. So it's easy to go ahead and get ahead of this before it becomes an issue right now. But 6 to 8 months from now, when the whispers become more talks become more anxiety and this and that, things start happening more and more with larger companies, it's going to be hard to make moves because fear is thin in the marketplace and nothing's going to move. So it's like just prepare now while we're ahead of the curve and then ride the thing out, because everyone's going to have to ride out whatever's coming. And it's definitely coming. We just don't know the severity of it. And it's all self-inflicted, because every company is in an absolute race against each other to automate the hell out of jobs.
Yeah. I mean, listen, self-driving cars is the perfect example of this. 27%, I used to be in the transportation industry. 27% of the economy is employed in the transportation industry. 27%, at least it was a few years ago. It might be a little bit different now, right? But like all these people that are driving Ubers, well, how long after Tesla rolls out robo-taxis in Austin, I think they're supposed to do it next week or whatever, how long after that happens to where Uber says, why do we pay drivers? You know what I mean? Like right now they pay drivers because they don't have to buy resources. They don't have to buy cars. But the thing is, like, what they pay Uber drivers, $20 an hour, $25 an hour after expenses, something like that is what the average is. That $20 an hour will buy cars. Like if you're paying an Uber driver $800 a week, which is what most of those guys are making when they work full time. Doesn't matter what market they're in. I find it fascinating, actually. If you're paying them $800 a week, how expensive is that robo-taxi? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if I can save $800 a week, that's $2,400. Even if that's a $2,000 a month payment on that taxi, I'm better off to pay the $2,000 and make $400 more.
Yeah.
And that thing runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's really deceptive because your driver's only working 40, 50 hours a week max. So you're really getting 160 hours worth of production out of a robo-taxi or whatever. Because there's going to be some downtime for maintenance and stuff. But I mean, the point is, like, it's inevitable that those jobs are going away, and semi-drivers and all those jobs go away. And when those jobs go away, the job for the people that are dispatching them goes away too, because that'll be easy to automate and put into an algorithm. And so pretty soon we see, like, at the minimum, a third of our economy goes away just from those jobs.
Yeah.
And the only jobs that are left at 24 months, 36 months from now are like human touch jobs. Like I have a friend who's a futurologist out of Britain, and he calls it the care economy. It's like the surgeon's job will get eliminated, the people that are doing that, but the primary care doctors will take longer to eliminate them because people want to talk to a real person. And the nurses even longer, because if you're going into surgery, you might not care who's doing the surgery, but you know what you do care about? The person that comes in and tells you everything's going to be okay, right? Like those are the last jobs to go. But that's like, max 10 years, 15 years. And even those jobs go away.
And that's very max, because there's so many things on the forefront right now that are like just borderline hitting the market. So once those things hit the market, you got iteration after iteration after iteration. It's going to accelerate. I'm going to absolutely take your advice and hit these up with different models, let them play against each other, find the positivity setting, because when it does come to buy or hold with get ahead of it. Like you though, we're in subsidy housing, workforce housing. No matter what, regardless, people have to have housing. The government will kick in at some point. That piece, but anything that has a want instead of a need in front of it, like extended stay, relying on transient travelers, or this or that, or those are the things that I feel like we'll get just.
Yeah, and we see the vulnerability of that stuff, right? Like, look what happened to the office market a few years ago after COVID, right? Like the rest of the real estate market skyrocketed and office collapsed because so many people went to work from home. Now, some of that's reversed, but it's not like it accelerated the trend, and it's never going to reverse completely. And now we're going to automate most of those jobs away. So what are office buildings going to be worth when there's office jobs needed? Not very much, right? So while I do think you can still make money in office, you can, but the question is like, for how long and to what extent? And another, I'll give you a pro tip here. This is something I think is really important. For guys like us and anyone who's watching already has a reasonable real estate portfolio. Man, you should have a really nice primary residence somewhere that you wouldn't mind living if you didn't have a job and had no money coming in. Because I do think that like there's a real probability that all jobs will go away. I don't know what the probability is, but it's real. There's a definite possibility of it. All jobs go away, and then the government's response is, you get to live for free wherever you live, and we're going to make sure that you have money for food, or that food gets delivered to you, or whatever, so that your basic needs are covered. But that's it. And we're going to nationalize real estate. It could happen. I don't know what the probability of that is, but it's a non-zero probability. And in that event, I want to live on a beach. So I bought a condo in Puerto Rico, right? And if I see this coming, I'm going to live in Puerto Rico, and that's going to be my primary residence, because I'm going to stay on the beach, because I know that if I'm going to live out the rest of my days, however long that is, with no job and no ability to produce income because the AI is smarter than me and it provides all the needs that I have, the ant farm scenario, I'd rather be the ant that's living on the beach than the one that's living in workforce housing that I used to own.
So I just spent last 2 days at Cincy AI event here, Cincinnati, and a huge concern is income tax, and then the local municipalities, governments are not there's no income. The income's been disrupted to the point where they can't keep the infrastructure maintained and in place. That's a big concern of a keynote speaker here locally. And I think that another spin on the tariffs, the Trump tariffs, is I think that they already know that. And that's a part of why tariffs are going to be so important, because then you have other countries giving you income that you need in order to operate your government instead of relying on the people's income. China just agreed to 55% tariffs to access our economy. And these other countries, I think that they already know this, and that's forward thinking. They need tariffs in order to operate, because they all know where jobs are headed.
Yeah. And we're probably going to move in. The most optimistic scenario, and the one that I tend to believe, is that we'll move into some kind of like universal abundance where everyone's needs are met. And because the cost of components goes down, because the reason houses cost a lot, or apartment buildings are worth more money and can charge more rent, is because they have to be justified economically. Otherwise, we can't afford to construct them. But if construction costs go way down, values go down for sure, because we don't have a shortage of land, right? We don't have a shortage of ability to build upward. So if construction costs and materials get to the point where they can build cheaper, there may be very little value in this, which is why I don't know exactly what happens. But what I do know for sure is if it goes a different way, we're going to have a situation where there's no revenue coming in to cover those basic needs, right? So I think things get cheaper over time, honestly. I really do. Like, I mean, I think technology, like if you look at computing technology, it's gotten way cheaper over time. TVs, I mean, heck, to have a monitor the size of the one that I'm looking at you at right now, which is a standard size, 19-inch monitor or 22-inch or whatever, I don't know, but it's not very big, right? It's just a normal monitor. That would have cost, and not been a flat screen, right? It would have cost a couple $1,000s 10 years ago, right? So like this idea that prices always go up, it hasn't applied to technology because technology gets cheaper over time because of Moore's law and other inputs. But that what's happening now with AI is that's going to start applying to everything, not just technology. AI, because it creates a tremendous amount of wealth, will be disinflationary.
I agree with that.
And as a result of that, we might all be fine. And if that's the case, if you owe a lot of money, like I'm sure you do, and like I do, right now we feel comfortable because it's backed by assets. But if the asset price goes down and we still owe a lot of money, it could be disastrous.
Right.
There is a possibility of that. I actually think there's enough people that would be hurt by that the government would probably step in and do some debt cancellation type stuff or whatever. But I don't know, right? So there's this part of me that says I should just like get out of everything, downsize the portfolio to where I only have free and clear assets, right? Because if I only had free and clear assets, I'd have, maybe like 15% of what I have now in assets, but I would have that 15% would be very safe. And if it went down in value, it wouldn't matter because it wouldn't have any associated debt. If everything went down in value effectively the dollar became much, much, much stronger, it wouldn't hurt me in that scennario.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because I'd still own the whatever assets I own. So leverage becomes a real problem in a deflationary environment.
Well, I think it becomes who's the buyer. No matter what, if you can't sell something, it's not worth. Real estate's only worth what someone's willing to pay. So in an environment where jobs are missing,
there's no one to buy it because no one has any money, and if they did have money, they wouldn't want to give it to you because what's it worth? They can't collect rent because no one's got a job to pay the rent.
Yeah, it's just going to be. And I know universal basic income, tax to technology companies, corporations who are automating AI, that funds that whole bucket. I get that, but at the same time, if you've lost your job, you've got AI, you got 4 kids, wife, house, $250,000 salary you're used to supporting everything with, the universal basic income is equal. So whereas it's just how does it work for one and not the other? And then
that's the thing. That's why I say, like, once we get to that point, like, it's kind of like a black hole. We don't know what's going to happen. And it might depend dramatically on the people that are in charge at that time and how they respond to it. And I don't know who that will be, right? Like, I mean, we can be reasonably certain that for the next 3.5 years that the current administration will be in charge here, but this may happen outside of that 3.5 year window. It might be 4 or 5 years. It might also occur during that 3.5 year window that we need to make these decisions. And I don't know, they haven't telegraphed to me how they would decide on those issues. I hope they're thinking about it though, because they may have to make those decisions. Like, I hope that, and I'm optimistic they are, because, people like, even in spite of this recent feud between the president and Elon Musk, people like Elon Musk understand these things and have a direct line of communication with the administration. So hopefully they've had some of these conversations and have at least started thinking about this, because it's not something I would want to have to decide.
They've got it modeled out.
I don't want to have to decide it at the last minute. I want to have a plan for it.
No, they've got it modeled out. They know exactly when's going to start hitting at what time, and they're preparing. No one's going to announce anything, create mass pandemonium, but they are certainly behind the scenes putting things in place because they see it's all modeled. They are way far ahead than anybody else. Way far ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I assume so, right? I mean, but again, that's me being optimistic, right? Like I'm being optimistic about this. Like I have all kinds of theories about what could or could not happen, but the reality is it's going to depend on the people in charge and how they decide to respond. Because um, you could see people going full Luddite, right, and saying like, "We need to shut it all down. We're going to shut the internet off." You could see people going the opposite way and being like, "Let's give everyone a universal basic income." It could be any range in between there.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer.
Time will tell, my friend. So,
It's definitely
yeah.
interesting. I love interesting stuff. So,
Yeah.
like, to me, I want to just like, I just want to embrace all this and chaos and change and stuff like that. It makes me like, it invigorates me. But most people aren't paying attention enough to even know how crazy it is right now.
Does Puerto Rico have property tax?
It does. So, but their property tax law in Puerto Rico is really weird. It's based on the 1950s value of the
Okay.
property, and then it's a really high percentage of that value, like 15% annually of the 1950s price, right? Like 1955 or something like that. So as a result, it's actually a pretty low property tax, and then you get a pretty good exemption for your primary residence. I don't know exactly how that works because I don't have a primary there, but my taxes are really low on my condo. I think it's like $1,000 a year or something like
What's the prices on condos going for?
that. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge variance, right? I mean, if
Just
you want
depends.
something like a 2 bedroom on the beach in a tourist area, you could easily be spending $500,000 to $1 million in a nice building. But you could also buy like outside of the city a 5 bedroom house for $150,000, right? Like
Got it.
in a little bit of land and like close to the rainforest and with maybe a distant ocean view, right? I mean, like a really nice property. So like it kind of depends on where you are, what you're willing to tolerate, how much amenities you want, stuff like that. I bought a cheap place because it's just me. I bought a studio apartment for $175,000.
Yeah. Yeah, but it gets you totally out of the BS when you want to go out and all
Yeah, I don't
out.
have to think about it. Like, I spent 102 days there last year, and I was renting. I rented a place in Puerto Rico for 3.5 years, but it was costing me about 2,500 a month. And I just kind of went like, that's $300 a day, like $30,000 a year, and I was there 100 days.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could have stayed in a really nice hotel for $300 a day, so I needed to fix that. So I bought a place because at least now I'm not throwing money at rent to someone else. Um, I finance it, so I have a little payment, but my all in cost is a lot less than it was before, right?
Yeah.
And so my total out of pocket is less, and then of course my goal is over the next year, let's say, to just pay it off completely, and then have like almost no carrying costs. It'd be like $200-300 a month to keep the place.
Got it. Cool. All right, Jeffrey, if appreciate the conversation. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, learn more about you, your firm, and or just connect, how can they reach out?
Sure. I mean, honestly, I'm Jeffrey Holst everywhere. So like at Jeffrey Holst on X, Instagram, Facebook. My email address is on the screen if people are watching it, but it's jeffrey.holst@gmail.com. My website's jeffreyholst.com. So I'm not hard to find. If you Google me, you'll find me. I promise.
All right, brother. I appreciate your insights. Appreciate your time. Thank you.